welcome back to the IAESTE ASBL podcast. I'm joined today by the president of the association, Mr. Thomas Faltner. Hello.
Hello, good morning, Mark.
How are you feeling? Yeah, good to see you too. How are you feeling, Thomas?
Well, after almost a week of conference, the board meeting ahead, a little bit exhausted to be honest, but on the other hand, I think the past few days we had good meetings, good discussions, and I believe the association is going to the right direction. So today will be an interesting day. We have elections, electing the new board members. Actually, your successor.
Yes, exactly.
So that will be also a crucial day, I think, for the future of our association. But I'm very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, we had a quite different annual conference to that what we are used to, and I don't know how many ACs you are active since 18 years in the association. So, like I think since 2002.
I think my 18th annual conference, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and the first one totally online. So what do you think? I mean, of course, we were struck by COVID, and that is the reason, but what does it make you proud how we set that up, actually, that we were able to do the general conference as it is? Because in the end, it was smooth, till now, at least.
I think, well, the challenge at the end is, in my opinion, it's not the techniques behind it. I think, not only because we are an engineering association, or an association with a very large membership in engineering, techniques is ready for this, and I mean other organizations, industry, corporates are doing this for a much longer time than we are doing it. The major difference is we are built up on trust, on friendship, and to maintain a friendship, to maintain trust just via online interaction is really challenging. And I think anyone who maybe has friends from around the globe, you usually can't see that often physically, or even maybe just once in 10 years or something like this, does know how challenging this is. And I think in addition in this conference, there comes something on top, like, and that's the direct interaction with our delegates, with our friends, with the participants. Because I think we did very well in having a very well-structured program in parallel. So most people who are, let's say, sitting in the conference session, they might be aware but don't participate in the side workshops that go in parallel to the conference session, simply because with more than 700 participants, we wanted to offer them something in parallel to keep them involved over the whole week. And I mean, all the delegates can see us during the conference session, our reactions, at least when the camera is pointing on us, but we don't see at all the delegates. We see reactions in the chat, which is I think is very important to get at least
to have
feedback.
a kind of feedback in the end.
On the other hand, I mean, I'm realistic. I think with our resources, what we are able to put to this online organization of the conference, it's basically the best setup. I mean, I remember I've been in some other meetings where basically you work with a very large number of large screens, and you really can interact and see all the participants. So it's like your computer screen, but 10 times larger, and then you really have, like on a Zoom call, all the participants, and you see
this
all
gallery,
the faces,
and then you see all the reactions, if you are able to catch them, because if you have a huge screen, it's actually quite also hard
to locate the individual people. But I think, I mean, I'm very confident that next year we will go in a direction that hopefully a good number of our members can physically attend the conference again, and let's see how this will develop. If it does make sense to have still a kind of hybrid setup of the conference to allow the interaction with participants who cannot travel, who will stay in their countries, in their offices. I think that's something what we can start evaluating over the summer. I think at this stage it's far too early to really say, oh, we will do it like this, we will do it like this. I think
because you have the hype after the conference, and it's really, I mean, it's nice to also have some local committee members, to have some volunteers who get like a glance of what we are experiencing normally, because always there's just a certain amount of people going from a national committee to the annual conference, and they are then really seeing the broader picture of IAESTE, so to say. So it was for me when I joined my first AC back in Korea in, I think it was 2017, it was like seeing the broader picture of IAESTE when really sitting in the general conference, like in the UN. I'm always saying it's like in the UN. You have the people there with their country flags, and then they are voting on motions, discussing on the future of the association in the end. But if you are not basically allowed to go there, it's hard to transport this feeling back home, right?
Yeah. And I think in addition to this, I mean, how many of us, not of us, because we have usually this interaction with our members, but how many people in countries like Austria, Western Europe, I think that applies almost globally, really have interacted with so many different nationalities.
Yeah.
And usually, I mean, I think that's a natural thing. Humans are scared of things they don't know. So it's like, okay, well, it's not a big challenge nowadays when you are Austrian that you go to Germany, you go to Switzerland, you go to your neighboring countries or anywhere in Europe. Yeah. But when it comes to the point that you are asked, okay, would you go for a weekend trip to somewhere in Asia, somewhere in South America, somewhere in Africa, people already hesitate. Because they don't know what they are going into, how is the food, how is the accommodation, how is the trip, and so on. Simply because they might never have met anyone from that regions, or what's even worse, they only have heard what media is telling. I mean, it's a very unfortunate example when you talk, let's say, about some African countries and what perception our society especially in Europe is having, that you get people who are fleeing a war or something like this, and they are stamped on as non-educated and not willing to work and just interested in our social programs and so on, which I think is not really true. I mean, of course, in every society you might have people who are looking forward to public money and so on.
Of course.
But I think especially in IAESTE, when you meet people from our network and you realize what potential is in that countries, and how eager students, how eager university professors and employers are to contribute to this, I think that really shows what's the potential behind it, and also like to be maybe just, of course, a small part, but to be a part of changing the society, of having an impact on the society in being an eye-opener.
Yeah. That's actually the mission also. Our mission statement includes basically all this broadening the mind and helping. And what you said about Africa and the potential, I think it's really good that we have IAESTE, and also because when you're talking to Ottawa from IAESTE Nigeria as an example, or when we had, and I have another example, when I was in my local committee, we had a trainee from Tanzania back then, and the university professor was working at my university, and the professor was simply amazed about his work because he was staying there half a year and was really good. I think they were even able to publish a paper or so. And at the beginning, I don't know if it was like, but I was like a few years in IAESTE and was like, okay, we get a trainee from Tanzania. I thought, okay, we have to take a lot of care about him. And I mean, on the one hand, it was especially in the beginning too because of the culture shock, of course, for him. But in the end, it turned out really pretty well for the department of the university, for him and for us. But let's get us back. You are now in IAESTE for 18 years, and I want to a little bit talk about that. Because being in an association like IAESTE for 18 years, you have seen so many things, and also you can maybe a little bit describe the change when you joined back in 2002 and now in 2001 hosting our first online annual conference. What do you think changed most, beside the fact that we got registered as an ASBL? I mean, that's the obvious thing, that's a legal part, but what do you think changed from 2002 and over the years most?
The people.
The people.
I think definitely the people. And unfortunately, to both directions, to the good and to the bad.
Okay.
And maybe that's a very hard assessment what I'm doing now. But when I joined, and I was a student back in 2002 at the age of 23, so definitely not a freshman at university anymore.
Yeah.
But I was overwhelmed about the caliber of people at this time that were in IAESTE, that were sitting in our general conference. Not because of their age. Age is something that comes automatically.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time. But we had people in there representing members, representing cooperating institutions, who were university rectors, who were really high up in the administration of the government, like vice ministers. We had in some cases people with, let's say, a similar setup that we would have like in student-run countries, where the national secretaries actually were volunteers and had a let's say a regular job that is paying their bills, but this kind of regular job was like being in the top management of multinational companies or something like this. So this experience, what was at this moment present, was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I don't know why, but over the years, I always had the feeling those people lost the interest in IAESTE. Not in what we are actually doing in terms of providing internships, having a cultural impact on the people who go on this internship and also on the wider society, but I think in terms of the conference.
Yeah.
I'm fully aware it's a very long conference, it's a very intense event, and the value of time is getting more and more important. I mean, everyone is used now, like you have your mobile device and you click and you have ordered something, you have done this. And
this instant gratification, I'm hungry, I order food, oh, I need that, I order it on Amazon most of the time.
Exactly. And I mean, I think the pandemic didn't definitely make this perception better, because like when you are in some countries not allowed to leave the house for certain things, or when shops are closed and you're in need of something, now you go online and order the stuff. And I think now the group of people who is attending our conference is diverse. They have of course other experiences, other points of view. Like we have nowadays more students than we had back in 2002 in terms of committees who are represented by students, not in the total number of students. So I remember the challenge with our annual conference was always the number of participants. And slowly but steadily we introduced rules to restrict the number of participants per committee in relation to the exchanges, in relation to, let's say, are they planning to host another conference, so they need to bring in people to get trained and see how it's going. I remember my very first conference, 2003 in Bangkok. I think we were 16 or 17 people from Austria attending. Can you imagine this?
Wow.
So each local committee was at least sending one person. The national committee was sending, I think, 6 people, 5 to 6 people. Myself, I was there because I was involved in the organization of the conference 2004 in Vienna. So it's unbelievable. If you nowadays would think like large student-run committees, like Austria, like Poland, like Czech Republic, they would send these large delegations. We simply would not fit them in our venues anymore, for a simple reason, because back then, 15 years back, we did not have so many committees in IAESTE, and that's a big difference. I think we were continuously but steadily growing. Unfortunately, not in terms of our exchange numbers, but in terms of the coverage of countries, in terms of the number of committees. And that's always, let's say, a kind of interesting aspect. What I'm always asking myself is, if we wouldn't have decided to grow in the number of countries we are interacting with, in the number of committees, where would our exchange numbers now? Would they be even lower? Or would we maybe have, just because we are, we could have focused more on the existing membership, would they be equal or even higher? I think, and although I still regularly think about this fact, I think it's the right decision to expand to as many countries as possible, simply because our target group slightly changed, in my opinion. In the very past, and even back in 2002, 2003, the student mobility within European countries was still a bit limited. I mean, don't forget, most of the Eastern European countries were not members of the European Union. Erasmus program was there, but not as well established as it's now.
Yeah, it was simply an idea in the early 2000s,
And so there was a high demand of students of going abroad, and IAESTE was a perfect program for this. Well, nowadays, if you're a European student, to be honest, to travel within Europe, you don't automatically pick IAESTE as your first choice. Only if we are doing really well in terms of presenting our portfolio, talking about our possibilities, then I think we have definitely some very unique aspects that can attract students. And one of them might be our reception program when the students are going to another country and really there is a network that is taking care of them. Another aspect, of course, is that the internships are paid when the students are going abroad, paid in a way that they can cover their living costs.
Exactly. So you're not getting rich in the end.
Exactly. But I think that should not be the intention. I think the intention, when you're a student, should be to add something to your curriculum, to your portfolio. And I mean, we had a keynote from Markus Orlowski the other day. And I know Markus for quite a long time now. And I still remember so very well a sentence that he said, I think almost 15 years ago to myself, do great things, the profit is a byproduct. And I think that is something what people need to understand. When you just focus on earning money, yes, in the short run, you might get certain amounts of money, but in the long-term perspective, I doubt that this is the real key to success. While when you from the very beginning think about what can you do to really have an impact, to really develop yourself, and I think then all the other aspects they come along. And I mean, you can think about people like, for example, Elon Musk, whatever you want, and I recently saw that he is now the richest man on the planet. I mean, it's always depending on what really calculate you in, but I think definitely he's a visionary, and he's very much into new technologies and well, I'm not so sure if our future is on the Mars or not, but
but in the end, it's just like people like him basically driving the future of the whole planet because they want to achieve something and they say they have the passion for it. And I think also in IAESTE we are driven also by people with a passion and a vision about the association. I think it was also the same back then in the end. Because you always had like, I mean, you are now basically also internationally involved, like actually since 18 years, being internal auditor, chairperson of the conference, and so on. And I like that you are honest here, because that's the point. We want to get you know better with this project. And
I mean, coming back to what I said before about the type of the people or the caliber of the people. What I think we are, not just IAESTE, but our society is very unfortunate with is the way how education is nowadays designed. Everything is focused on, it has to be done fast, it has to be done very efficient. We are trying to move our students through universities of applied science that are basically just designed like a school. You have to be there. There is no real freedom of study to develop yourself in a very short period of time. And I think that is actually the main difference, because the students 15 years ago, they had a much longer career in IAESTE than the average student can have now. I think, Mark, you are one of the very unique examples of a very long career in IAESTE, and I think you would agree with me. There are not so many people or so many students who were that, in terms of IAESTE, or IAESTE was that fortunate that they could dedicate such a long time. The classic student career nowadays in IAESTE, I think when you're 3 years with the association in your local committee, in your national committee, is already a long career. And I think, I mean, we have to be realistic. When someone is joining as a student, let's say at the age of 20, 21, IAESTE in his local committee, you need some time to develop, usually.
Yes.
And to mature, like a good wine, for example. And in the past, it was like this. People had a little bit of time to mature in their local committees, went to the national committee, and then those people that became internationally active, they already had like 2 to 3 years career in their own country. While nowadays you can make it from 0 to a very high involvement in a very short period of time. Yeah. And I think that's a natural thing. IAESTE is here like as to get experiences, to develop yourself, and I think it's essential to find this kind of balance of people who have experience, who have the ability also to share this experience with others, and of people who are willing to learn, willing to develop themselves, but also willing to develop the association.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think especially in Central Europe, we have now this situation that, of course, the economy demands on the one side graduated students, so there's a demand because of the economy. But on the other side, I can totally confirm that the freedom of really doing or exploring yourself at university, at least in Austria, was really decreasing a lot. It's like, I think it's countless times when I had basically to justify myself why I was investing time to IAESTE, and even like, I like it, you know, I like the people, I like what we are doing, I believe into that what we are doing, was simply not enough, and there was really a very long discussion. Funny thing though, and that's I think something we also should mention here, or maybe talk a little bit about, I had a lot of situations with fellow students, and they were like, yeah, still doing IAESTE, you know, what's about studying? And now they graduated already, and I'm aiming for my master graduation in the next month. Now they are saying, you know, Mark, I think you were right. And I had a previous discussion with our honorary president, Wolfgang Schreiber, and he described for students IAESTE as the IAESTE MBA, which basically meant that university as such is for your education as a professionalist, for your profession, like for me, electronics. But IAESTE is basically the soft skills and everything, and all the diplomacy also sometimes. And I think that was a very wonderful description actually. And when we are looking now to some other student-run committees, sometimes they are there with, 19, 20 years old. I think I was 25 when I joined my first annual conference. And you see, how is it for you then when you see these people or these students sometimes joining at 20, growing up throughout the years, and growing up in the end? How is it for you?
Well, it's fascinating. It's fascinating when you see the development of young people, but not only young people. I mean, it's in addition also fascinating when you see, and the beauty of IAESTE, I think, is we have a very large variety of generations within the association. And not automatically you need to be very young to be new in IAESTE. I remember we have regularly from our members getting representatives, getting delegates who are simply new to IAESTE, who did something totally different in their previous career. And in some cases, of course, they have not any knowledge at all when they meet you the first time about how we are really structured, how processes are going, and so on. And I mean, it's although it sounds very simple to exchange a student or send one student from country A to country B and vice versa, and of course there's a little bit of work permits, a little bit of reception program, and so on. But the overall process, what we have designed, that this is working, and there's a history behind this process. is not sometimes that straightforward. So you need to invest some time to get used to it, and then you see how fast sometimes people taking this up even come with new ideas and see, like, well, I worked in another agency, another organization, and we did something similar, but a little bit different in terms of how we executed it. Can you think about this? And I think this is really a valuable add-on to IAESTE, and definitely I think in any organization, in any association, in any corporate, the real capital is the human capital. It's not the money at the end. I think if you have nowadays a good idea and you look for an investor that you convince, and you have a little bit of, let's say, also sales talent, to get a certain amount of money is doable. But what is not doable that easy is to hire a large number of people. And there comes in addition, a major difference in an organization like IAESTE. In most of the cases, we are based on volunteers. And that is even more challenging. I mean, like when you work in a corporate, you have various aspects on how to, let's say, attract people, on how to motivate people. And I'm not saying here the motivation is the payment. Yeah. But let's say motivation are things like working conditions, like the working environment, like many side aspects that are coming with, and unfortunately IAESTE is not in this position to provide some side aspects that corporates can provide. I think our luck to attract talent is these interesting projects what we are doing, the possibility to development, to open the eyes of people and really give them a broader view of the world, of the society, and I still see that people are valuing this, and that's why thankfully we are still attractive to volunteers, to students who want to join the association.
And those who are then joining us are really motivated, actually, then in the end. Of course, they also want to do an internship because that's what we do, right? But they are really willing then to also invest the time necessary. And like you said, it's often not so easy to the onboarding process, I'm always saying, is it's sometimes not so easy. But once you are in it, it's actually hard to the IAESTE spirit is not leaving anymore. And what I loved most about this conference in online setup, and let's now come to let's say this last year in the end, because you got elected for president last year. So it's one year in your term, and it's a 2-year term in general, so you have one more and then you can be re-elected. It was a challenging year. And when we are looking now at the random networking we had, which was basically matching up random people in the platform, talking to each other, people said, I'm getting the IAESTE spirit throughout this online conference. But of course, it's not totally the same. So let us recap a little bit. How was this year? Because when we left Slovakia, the conference last year was in Slovakia, when we left there, our only physical board meeting actually, we had a lot of plans which basically were obsolete basically 3 weeks later, because then mainly in Central Europe and Americas, the coronavirus pandemic. So let us recap now a little bit. How was it in your perspective, that overthrowing all our plans, not all our plans, but
I think it's yes, of course, we started with very ambitious plans. We communicated very ambitious plans, and initially, to be honest, I think we all underestimated the impact the pandemic would have. And then it's not that we as organization underestimated this. I think our governments, our society underestimated this. And when you compare these statistics what are regularly published now of the spring time and compare them to the time where we are now in, I think you see how maybe ridiculous some of the measures were that we had in spring. although maybe they were not so ridiculous, because that's the reason why the numbers in spring were that low. So it's really hard to assess. And I think what was the most challenging, and still is the most challenging aspect of all this pandemic, is this uncertainty. Whatever you plan and have in mind can be a few days later totally irrelevant. Simply because situation is changing, regulations by governments are changing, and like I'm an engineer, so like when you're used to a kind of structured planning and try to have kind of let's say schedule and execution plan, and then you permanently need to make a turn and maneuver through this. That's, I think, was not only for myself, but I think for all of us in the board and as well as the support team, quite exhausting. And in addition comes this, yes, we had a good number of online meetings. We were very active in various groups within the association. But I think, of course, you always can say, like, well, are physical meetings really that much necessary? And they also have a financial impact because we need to travel and have a carbon footprint when we go somewhere.
Also,
But on the other hand, I think you need a certain number of physical meetings over the year in order to align in some aspects, in order somehow also to motivate yourself. I'm not saying the main motivation of being active in the board, being active in any of the groups, should be that you have once, twice, or 3 times a year the chance to travel a little bit and have a physical meeting. But I mean, the energy what you usually get out of attending the annual conference, that is, I think, for everyone who is attending the conference, a major boost throughout the year.
Yeah, it's a motivation, and because the board is full of volunteers, the support team are part-time employees, so it's not like that they earn a fortune with us.
Exactly.
So it's always the motivation. We rely on the motivation and the passion of our support team and the board on the international, but also for our national committees, of course. We rely on this passion.
I was also here referring more to our members, to our national committees, because like, that's the way when you finally, or the only moment when you finally can see all your exchange partners, you can hug each other, you really have a real interaction with them. And especially what we also face here during this conference, the time zone difference. I mean, in the past we were at the conference when people were coming from far away, they were jet-lagged. And now it's this term, we are time-lagged, because like we are in Europe and we have like a board member from India. We might have soon another board member from exactly the other time zone from the Americas. And I mean, when you need to cover a time span of 10 hours, 11 hours, I mean, that makes it really, really challenging to have meetings in a proper condition, because that means whether one is staying awake until almost midnight or the other one is getting up at 4 in the morning. And yes, that's doable, of course that's doable. But for what price? When you compare, you can have achieved much more in one physical meeting. For what else you need 5 online meetings and so on. So I think that is something what everyone will learn out of this situation, that doing things online is good, is important, and is part of our future, but it never can replace the physical interaction. I think that's the humans are social, are tending to socialize, and that's why this is a very, very important aspect.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think on the one hand we were, let's say, lucky throughout the pandemic, because we were used to online meetings, right? So you were in the board, you were treasurer before, so you were used. Okay, you see your team members in the end like 3 times a year. In the rest of the year, you are sitting at home in your home office doing the work, and so that was not changing. The difference was that even these 3 really nice. Of course, it's traveling, but these motivation peaks were missing, and so that was like really let's say we were lucky, we knew it somehow, but of course it was missing.
Yeah.
But we are really looking forward.
I think we were very fortunate at the end that all the members, like board members, support team members, we knew each other already for quite a long time before.
True, yeah.
So we were used to do on other projects, to work together, to interact with each other. While I think when you and we had boards in the past where the board members, of course, they knew each other, but they were never working before. And then it's really a challenge, because you need some time to understand the ideas, the opinions of other people. And I mean,
also the way how somebody expresses himself.
Exactly.
Like,
I mean, we are different cultures.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we are both Austrians, and we have a, let's say, I would say quite similar perception on some things. But when you have very much different cultures in the board, it's the way how someone is addressing something when there is a problem. And in addition, we all not native speakers. So when two Austrians speak English to each other, then we know what we are saying, but it can easily happen if you have a native speaker listening to that conversation. That guy doesn't get any clue what we are talking about in English, because we use different terms that are not really
and transferring sayings we have
in our own language. And I think that is the challenge behind all this. But I'm on the other hand, I think what we achieved during this year is still remarkable. And of course there are many things we could have done better. Retrospectively looking to it, but it's always like this. I think even without the pandemic, there would be aspects where we say, well, if we would have known this, we would have done this different. Or
And in the end, as an exchange association, I have to say, as I was responsible for exchange, we did exchange in the end, and that was, I think, really a huge achievement, because when I was talking, and I think you said once the same when you were talking with business partners from your profession, you did exchange really in these times. So it's really remarkable what we can achieve if we really are working together. Thomas, we are unfortunately running out of time. I think that could go on forever. So let me ask my last two questions. So the first one, I was asking some people around here and also on our conference platform, what should I ask you? And the question always came up, you're now in the association for 18 years. How do you keep yourself motivated for what we do in IAESTE?
That's a good question, actually, because, being very honest, especially in the past year, I had my moments when the motivation was on a very low level. I think keeping the motivation is when you see not automatically my ideas, but our ideas, what we form together, come to life. See that projects are working out. See that members really benefit from this, and even more important, if members come with their own ideas and be active and be part of us, because I think the most important thing is the interaction we have in between each other, and that is, I would say, my main motivator behind
So it's the people.
Yeah, it's again, I think at the end it's all about the people. It's not about the software tools or
we need them for our administrative work.
They are just tools, but at the end it's the people, and I think it's if we would come from a total different perspective and say okay, you have and that's even, I'm not saying it's not an ideal case. It's more like a model of thinking. If you would have in every of our member countries one person who is capable of let's say doing everything and is very well prepared and has everything really set in place, the majority of these tools we would not need. Because that person would just say, okay, I'm exchanging with that country 30 offers, with that country 50 offers, with that this. Everything is so well prepared that you don't have any cancellation, you don't need additional follow-ups. The other countries are prepared on the equal level, and then it's a very smooth process. And nowadays the world is much more complex than it was 50, 60 years ago. So that's why we need all these tools and add-ons to make our life easier at the end.
So now coming to my last question, I want, imagine you can now speak to all students on the planet. So all who are relevant or not relevant, which I think we are focusing on natural science and technical studies, but you can speak to all of them. And what would you say to them that why they should go on an IAESTE internship or volunteering for IAESTE? So in a few sentences.
A few sentences. I think what I would say first to them is unite and talk to your governments, to your decision makers at the universities, and make it clear to them an essential part of education is self-development. Yeah. And self-development can only happen if you leave your bubble, if you broaden your horizon, and IAESTE can be one solution to this. We are not for every student in the world the solution. That is unfortunately very obvious. But I think if the young generation in these terms would really have a clear message to global leaders, I think that would have an impact, and I think once that step is done, then I think pick for yourself what you want to do most, because it's a unique chance. I think once you're graduated, once you start your first job, you think about having a family and so on, your flexibility is already limited, because with a job, maybe getting your first own apartment or a house or whatever, there comes a lot of additional responsibility, and usually you're not that easy anymore in going, okay, I go for 2 months for a job and even if it's a regular job, not talking about an internship, for a job assignment to the United States or to China or somewhere like this, because there are some responsibilities back at home. Well, when you're at university, what do you leave? A dormitory, the room at your parents' place, so that is not that a major thing what you're leaving back, and anyway you plan to return, so you are getting it back afterwards usually, and I think that is what I would like to tell young people, and the possibilities what IAESTE can offer in the local committees, in the national committees, I think they are large, and I think even when you think, well, that is not initially something for myself, or you're hesitating in going on an internship or joining IAESTE, talk to people who did it, and learn to know or get to know the world through their eyes, through their perspective, and I think usually this is changing the view of yourself. I mean, I'm myself, I've never been on an internship. By the company I'm still working for, I was sent even before I started studying on kind of work assignments abroad, and I had possibilities that the average student, in my opinion, never is having, and that was actually one of the reasons why I think IAESTE is so beautiful, because it's giving everyone this more or less equal possibility to get this experience, and usually it's an internship is a playground. You cannot really ruin anything, and in most of the cases, when you return and realize after 2 months, well, that from the perspective of what did it contribute to my education, what did I learn, I think the large number of our internship have a deep impact also on that, beside the cultural experience. But I think it's the personal development that matters, and even when you realize during the internship, well, that was not like I have expected the job or something like this. it shapes you.
Yeah.
And I think it's better to have this experience while you're still studying than when you have your first regular job assignment and realize, well, that is not like I expected it, because then it's maybe much harder and much more challenging to make the change and find something new.
Thank you very much, Thomas.
Thank you, Mark. It was a good chat.